Hello there, it's Juliana Michaels and welcome to my channel. Today I'm sharing an art journal page I created using my Metamorphosis digital paper crafting collection. This video is a little longer than usual so that I could make sure to share all the details with you. So if you've got a cup of coffee nearby, you might want to grab it and then settle in and enjoy the process. If you've been following along with this collection, you've already seen the intro video and the card making tutorial. I'll link both of those in the description box though if you have missed them and want to check them out. Today I want to show you how you can use the Metamorphosis collection on an art journal spread, from that first messy layer all the way to the finished page. Now let's get into it. I'm going to be working in my art journal, and the one I'm using here is the Strathmore Visual Journal. That's 140-pound watercolor cold press, and I'll have a link to this in the description box for those of you that might be interested in it. And I just removed the cover of it, that's like the paper cover, but you know, it still has a hard surface cover to it that you could decorate and all that. So, but I've just been enjoying flipping through the pages and working as I like through it. So just a couple notes with this real quickly, because it is cold pressed paper. One side is going to be smooth and then the back side is going to have like a texture to it. So when you're doing a 2-page spread, one side is going to be a smoother texture, the other side is going to have a little bit of a rougher texture that might bother you. It doesn't bother me at all. So just something I thought I would share with you. So before I start adding any of my Metamorphosis collection papers and ephemera to the pages, I want to kind of create a mixed media background. Now you can play with whatever kind of mediums you like. I'm going to be using some Distress Oxide inks here that coordinate with my collection, and I've got Rusty Hinge, Dusty Concord, Uncharted Mariner, and Ground Espresso, and then I'm going to be using a brayer, and then I'm just going to have this little piece of printer paper here just to kind of clean off my brayer in between. And we're just going to start putting some color down. So I'm going to start with the Uncharted Mariner and just going to roll my brayer. So I kind of roll and lift to kind of get that ink onto the brayer. And then I'm just going to apply that to the page, and I'm just going to kind of randomly apply the color here and there onto each page, and just kind of going in different directions, and kind of build this up. And I don't want it to be exactly the same on both pages, so you can just kind of rotate it around and work in different sections. And then depending on how bulky some of your pages are underneath, you know, it might give you different variations of how the ink will go on. But if you want it a little darker, just kind of go back over the area again if you like. So I'm just going to do that here and there, a few spots. There we go. I'm just going to clean that off here a little bit. Now let's move on to the next color. So next I'm going to do a little Dusty Concord, get that loaded up on there. And then just gonna put a little purple here and there. And as I'm applying the color, I'm kind of thinking about spreading that color around a little bit so that it's not all over the page. You can just, if you want just little bits of it here and there, you can just put a little bit of the brayer down. You don't have to go all the way across. And clear that one off. And now we're going to do a little of the Rusty Hinge. And just kind of layer that over here and there. There we go. A little bit in this corner here. There we are. Maybe a little bit there. There we go. Now, if you want to go back in and fill in any empty spots, you can. Or add more ink with the other colors, you can certainly do that. I'm going to go in and, you know, let's not do the ground espresso just yet. Let's leave it at that for now. And I think what I want to do next is just let this ink dry. It's kind of wet, so I'm just going to give that a quick dry with my heat tool. And now if you don't have a brayer, you could also just use like blending brushes and apply the oxide ink to the background in various sections just to give you kind of that colored background. It would give you a little smoother effect as well. So now I'm just gonna take a stencil. It's just one I happen to have pulled out of my stash, and I'm gonna use those same inks and just a blending brush here, and I'm going to go over these areas with the same ink in that area. So it'll kind of smooth it out a little bit, but you'll still have some of that nice, wonderful texture underneath there. So that's kind of the effect you're going to get there. And I'm just going to kind of move this stencil around to various sections where I have also used that Uncharted Mariner. Just kind of go through the stencil here and there. I kind of like this kind of all over. It's not exactly the same all over, but when you move it around, you don't have to super worry about lining it up to make it look so perfect. It still gives you a really nice kind of grid effect, but that's kind of what we're going for here. So if you kind of wanted to fill in a little bit in an area where you don't have any ink, you could do that. And then we'll just repeat over here, kind of the same thing. So in the areas where, it's a little bit darker from the brayer, not as much is going to show up, but it still gives you, I think it still gives a really cool effect. And remember, this does not have to be perfect. Kind of the whole idea with art journaling, and at least in my book, is just kind of playing and enjoying the process of creating. So nothing has to be perfect here. It's also a great way to just try techniques that you've not tried before, which I kind of enjoy that kind of way of using it as well. All right, so now I'm just going to switch over colors and just kind of leave the stencil in place there. Switch over to the Dusty Concord. And ink through that area there. And just going to continue repeating that process over the rest of the background here. I do kind of wish I had some Dusty Concord right there. So I think I might add some now. See how that turns out. But oh yeah, that works just fine. All right. Give that a second to dry, just so I don't smear it. It's not absolutely necessary, but and then here, I am kind of trying to kind of line it up, find a similar spot with the stencil, just to kind of keep it looking intentional. There. Alrighty, and then lastly, we're gonna do the same thing with the rusty hinge. And if your stencil is getting kind of dirty at this point because of the other colors, you can always, you know, just give it a quick wipe off. And then continue on. Great, so there is our inky background at the moment. And now I'm going to put these away, and now I'm going to grab some Distress Oxide spray, and the color I'm going to use here is Ground Espresso, and I'm going to grab another stencil. So I've got this one here, and going to grab my splat box with some paper towel here in the bottom, and then I'm just going to give this a good shake to get all that pigment mixed in so that it won't clog. And then you're just going to need an extra paper towel, just a clean one, and what you're going to do is spray your stencil with the spray. So just give it a good coating of ink there, and then kind of set that over there out of the way. You're going to lay your, then you're going to pick up that stencil with the ink on it. Now you can spray this with some water if you want to just kind of get that oxide activated a little bit. So just a few spritzes of water will do. And then I'm just going to carefully flip this over and lay it on my page. Now I'm kind of holding up the end down here a little bit, kind of this edge here a little bit, because I don't want all of that smashed down on there. So I'm just gonna dab over the top of this here just to kind of transfer the ink that was on the stencil onto the page, and then I'm just gonna lift that up and kind of try to be careful as you can with it. I kind of slid it just a little bit, but I'm okay with that. That's okay. Dab off some of that. And then I'm just going to let that dry. And then I'm going to repeat that same thing for this other side. I'm going to give this another spritz just to get some more color back on there. And we'll give it a little spritz with the water. And if you want to avoid accidentally smashing that edge down on there, you could take, you know, just another paper towel and kind of clean off that harsh edge so that you don't have to worry about that. Let's do that around this whole thing here. There we go. So you don't have to worry about that then. We can pick this up and then I can kind of repeat that same process here. Again, just kind of holding up that upper corner, just because I don't want it like solid all the way across that whole thing. And then we're going to try to lift off a little more carefully this time. There we go. Ooh, I love printing with stencils. Like, that is just one of my favorite things. So much fun. And yeah, so if you wanted to do more of that in different areas on the paper, you can. I'm just going to leave it kind of in these corners opposite each other, and I'm just going to give this a quick dry with my heat tool. So now here's a look at our finished page layout, just kind of the background of it. And of course, if you want to, you know, fill in this section here, you can. You know, if you want to remove these pages, it's actually pretty easy. You can kind of go in, and I'm not going to do this, but you can go in between these, the spine here, and trim this. And if you do that on each one of those, which is what I did to this, so you're just cutting in between each hole, then you can easily snap this page back into your journal. So you can, you know, another option on how to work in one of these kind of ring bound journals. So there we are. And now we're gonna go on to using some of the Metamorphosis collection to finish the page. I'm just going to go through the papers that I've got here and just kind of pick ones that I think might be kind of fun to work with on here. You can maybe give it a little contrast. I don't think I will use these just because I didn't really use much green there, so I think I want to use something that kind of coordinates more with this color palette. This one seems a little like it might get lost. This gives me a little bit of contrast. This is that one. This was that one. That one. Oh no, not that one. Good. Ooh, that could be pretty on there. But I've also kind of got similar-ish kind of thing going on there, so maybe not that one. Stripes seem a little busy as well. Now I'm going to get into some of the more neutral ones. Don't want anything too super boring. That just seems like a lot. That possibly could be a piece of something there. That one's not speaking to me either. That could be interesting. Ooh. I'm really only going to just be using like some strips of this paper. I'm not going to be using like the whole big sheet. So I don't need anything with a lot of pattern on it. So I think I'm going to kind of go back here towards some of these that are a little more neutral and play with those here, I think. So I think this one, as pretty as it is, I think that one's going to out. So now we've got either these, one of these, or if I just should go with something a little more just neutral all the way across. So this is the fun part. Like, this is kind of me in the process of working. This is not planned out, other than I kind of thought about what I wanted to do on the background here. The rest of this, I'm kind of just playing around. See which one I think I like the most. I'm gonna just keep coming back to this one a little bit. Or that one. Now these are lighter, but we can, we can darken these up a little bit too with some ink. So I'm going to say no to this one. I think I just want something a little more subtle. Keep coming back to this one. So this one it is. And I think, I did this kind of work here with the stencil work. So I think what I want to do now is kind of put some of this pattern paper maybe towards the center here, or maybe just a strip there. I think that could be kind of cool, like to let's just do that. So I'm just going to go for it. So I'm just gonna give this a tear. You can always tear off more if we like. And if that's too much, like if you don't like, maybe you don't want to cover all that up. You can always, make this smaller. Kind of okay with that. And the same thing here. But let's go kind of opposite, so we'll go a little bit wider and then down. Oop. I like that white edge, so let's start over here. We'll start down there. And we'll just tear it out a little bit. There we go. Perfect. Okay. And before I put these in here, I'm going to ink the edges of this paper up a little bit. I think I might leave the white. Kind of like that. But let's darken this up here. And I'm just using some ground espresso distress ink here and a blending tool. Really, this kind of art journaling, it's really just a time for you to play. As I mentioned earlier, just kind of play and have fun, enjoying the process, playing with different tools and such. Now this is kind of a little bit harsh in there, so I'm thinking, let's see, we can tone that down a little bit. I'm just gonna use my blending brush, get some ink along through here. Doesn't have to be perfect, can just enough to tone down that super bright white. Same thing over here. Just kind of work at different angles. You can kind of slide the paper around a little bit. Work that ink in there. But this is working pretty good using the blending brush. So, but you can also have done this with the colors too, if you wanted to continue them over that way, that would work. That's just fine there. And now I'm gonna grab some, couple different things here. This is a new to me. It's glue sticks. Came exposed to these during a class that I took with Seth Apter. And then you make this kind of stuff a lot faster, and you have a little wiggle room with this kind of glue before it totally sticks down, because you really kind of have to burnish it down to get it to stick. It needs a little heat. So, like I said, you can peel it off if you're not happy with how it looks. And then once you are, then you can rub over it. And you know, if that bothers your hands, you can take like a this is like a stamp tool that helps push down a stamping platform. So that works pretty good. And then we'll do the same thing over here. There we are. And then you just grab some scissors and trim off that excess paper. And I'm just going to ink those edges up a little bit. There we are. Okay. So progress is being made. Ooh, I'm loving it. Yes, 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 yes. And now I'm just gonna go through my various ephemera pieces here and just, you know, there's pieces that speak to me as far as wanting to go onto this. Just gonna kind of play around with some pieces. That orange is quite bold, but again, they can be toned down a little bit. Maybe just one smaller piece. And I'm just gonna play around with putting some different ephemera pieces here and there and kind of layering them. And of course, we're going to need a butterfly somewhere, just not sure which ones. I like these plain ones, but I do feel like they need a little something on them, so I have an idea that might do there. And maybe one, so kind of continue the butterfly theme. Let's see what else we've got. Look at this one. Or this bigger one. Ooh, kind of like that. All right. So I think I like that. I'm just gonna take my blending tool here, and it's got some ground espresso ink on it. I'm just gonna ink the edges up a little bit more here, just to add to that, to the effect here. Okay, and this up, but like I I'm going to do something with this butterfly here. I'll do that next though, so we'll get all this inking done and kind of get these clusters together. And then we'll come back to that. Here we are. Okay. And then again, we'll just go back with some of that. Yeah, so like that. Get some on here. I'm really just kind of trying to stick these down before I forget where I had things. Go. Remove those a little bit if you want. And then let's play around with this butterfly like I was talking. And so what I'm going to do is just take a fine line black marker. So this is 0.5 millimeter thickness. It's just a permanent ink pen marker, and I am just going to start with adding the body here to my little butterfly. Just going to kind of color that in there. And I'm just going to go around the edges here. Doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, I don't want it to be perfect. I really want it to kind of have kind of a hand sketched look. Do that on the other side here. And then you could leave it as that if you like. I think I'm going to take it a step further and use a little bit of this butterfly here to kind of help with drawing some lines on the inside here. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect. You can just kind of enjoy the process of drawing. I am by no means the greatest at it, but especially freehand like this. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do up in here. Do we want to do like little circles or something? Let's just see what happens. Let's just try that. How's that? That works. And kind of once you get one side done, then it's a little bit easier to do the other side because you can just loosely copy what you've already done. Yeah, there we are. Yes, okay. I also have this Stabilo paper, plastic, glass, metal. It's a pencil that will work on all kinds of surfaces. So if you wanted to give this a little bit more of a distressed effect, then you could kind of color over some of what you did with the pen. And then you can take your finger and just kind of lightly smudge that a little bit. It just gives it a little more of a distressed effect. You could also do all the drawing with this pencil too if you wanted to really get that full effect, but I just kind of wanted around the edges here. Ooh, yeah. And then just gonna come back in here and ink this a little better. Darken that up, and then, ooh, yeah, loving that. Okay. It's hard for me not to want to do like foam tape and stuff here in the art journal because I love me some dimension, but you start doing too much dimension in these and your pages aren't going to lay flat. So just gonna get that there, and then, well, I'm kind of wondering, do I want to add some more stuff here? Do I want another? Ooh, that gets to be too much there. Let's see, do we have anything? No. That's too much. No, I think that's good. Sometimes less is more, right? And now we can just go through and select some kind of a sentiment to put on there. Like that one, I think. Here we are. And then from here, I mean, there's a, you could continue adding more things if there was some other ephemera pieces, maybe some of the tags or other things that you want to put in here. You could make, this little cluster, and you could do another, maybe even just another little something up here. That could be kind of cool. Let's futz with that a little bit. Let's see how that does. liking the idea of something round here, maybe. Kind of like that. I know, kind of taking a mind off of its own here, which I think that's the fun of this sort of thing. You just never know where the play can take you. Just kind of enjoy the process. Alright, so we're gonna add some of these little bits here. This one I'm gonna darken it up a little bit. It's kind of a little more bold than some of these other pieces here. It's the beauty of inking things, is you can kind of give it a slightly different effect to kind of fit the look that you're going for. That little edge right there needs some more ink on it too while I'm at it. There we are. There we go. Yes, all right, loving that. Okay, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and stick these down. It's also kind of the nice thing about not sticking it all the way down to start with. Like you notice I didn't glue everything super solid down. Gives me a little wiggle room when it comes to adding more pieces to the cluster. Because I am typically, I'm just not, it's hard for me to commit to placement. I usually like to move things around before I fully commit to them. And we'll just trim off this little bit here. And it's kind of a nice little nugget, so I might see if there's somewhere else I can stick that in so it doesn't go to waste. Kind of like it there, but it needs to stick out a little bit more, but I think that'll work. Let's just tuck it in there. There we go, perfect. All right. So here is where we are with the journal. Now you could keep going. You could add some stamping. You could add more embellishments, whatever you like. But I'm slightly leaning towards doing some stamping. But a lot of times I find when I start stamping, I tend to overdo it very quickly. So let's see what I can find that will do just a little bit of some subtle stamping. What I want to do is use this set from 49 and Market, but it's just got some, fun little text and script stamps here and there, so I thought might work nicely. Let's grab a stamping block. And then for the stamping here, I'm going to use some of this VersaFine Clair permanent ink. So I think it'll give me a nice image here. So we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed, huh? All right, yeah, that's good. Just a little subtle interest there. Nothing too much. Just kind of what I was going for. And also, if you don't want full amounts of it, you could just kind of do little stamps. Stamp some little sections like that. And you could also add some onto the pattern paper, but I think I'm just going to leave it like that for now. And let's see, I'm going through my stash here. I always love some good numbers. This is one of my favorite sets, so I think maybe we'll do a little stamping with this. Just add some images. There we go. And maybe that's getting a little too dark, but I'm just having fun. So just enjoy our process. I think with that one there. Do this here. Oh, there we go. And I don't really know how to just like explain here what I'm doing, but I'm just kind of, it helps to stamp one thing and then just kind of start building from that. So we can kind of just create a little collage layer, kind of little clusters of stamping here. And that's good there. Maybe, I don't know, I find these circle ones to go to. I love circle stamps. They always seem to fill in sometimes what might be missing. There. Oh yeah. And no. I'm just kind of laying stuff up here and kind of thinking about how it might look. Helps a little bit. Don't want anything to like super compete with down here, so if we just do one more little number up here and we can call that. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah. I think I'm happy that something down here, but figure out what that is. Oh, this could be good. Another little kind of circle stamp. And it's got kind of a collage all in there with it. Ooh, that's good. Yeah. And I feel like I need one more thing up here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Maybe I don't need any more. All right, so I know I said I was finished, and I did like this butterfly, but I don't know, it just wasn't speaking to me. So I kind of went back and forth with taking it off, which again, like I said, is kind of nice about this type of adhesive if you don't stick it down all the way, is you can peel it up and start over. And so I'm also, since I'm switching to this little darker butterfly, I'm going to go back in and find, because the sentiments are all the same in both of the colors that I have here. So there it is. So I just kind of have a little contrast because I feel like the black gets a little bit lost there. I can save this butterfly for something else, but I think I like this one better. Also goes back to me saying how I have a hard time committing to this sort of thing. I might come back in here and look at this tomorrow and wish I'd done something completely different, but there we go. But then there's also that, you know, just enjoy the process. There we are. I'm going to glue this down now fully. commit. And the last thing I want to do is add a little bit of some splatters. I'm just going to take my bleed proof. This is the Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof, and just get a little bit onto the tip of my paintbrush. And then I'm just going to add a little small drop of water to my craft mat here. You really don't need very much, but that'll just make it a little more fluid. And then you can do some splatters. So I'm going to just kind of hold my hand over the butterfly. Just not wanting to get too many splatters there. Of course, you know, you can add more or less splatters as you like. Different brushes can give you bigger splatters. I kind of like a fine splatter myself, but personal preference. And then there is a look at our finished journal page. So, you know, if you wanted to go in and do some actual hand journaling, you could do that. Sometimes I'll go back and do that sort of thing on my own, just kind of personal side of things. But there you go. So I hope you enjoyed this little bit of inspiration on how you can use my Metamorphosis collection to create an art journal page. And here's a look at the finished page. I hope seeing the whole process from that first layer of ink and stencils all the way through to the final details gives you some ideas for your own art journaling with this collection. All the supplies I used today are linked in the description box below, along with the Metamorphosis collection if you'd like to grab it for yourself. Up next, I've got a junk journal project using the same Metamorphosis collection, so keep an eye out for that one. Thanks so much for sitting through this longer one with me today. And until next time, stay crafty, my friend.